Sledges, Benson on sledges.
Okay, we're in the middle of dealing with Shehiyah on Shabbos. So far we discussed different Heterim when one is allowed to do Shehiyah, leaving uncooked food on a flame, on an open flame on Shabbos. One of them was, we discussed, is Kidra Chai said they're totally raw. The food is not even in the beginning stages of the cooking process. And we said from the chazonyisroel that that's before it's Yoel, before it reaches to many poskim 45 degrees Celsius, that type of heat. But once it becomes Yoel, the chazonyisroel says that's already a scholas bishul, that's already the beginning of the bishul process, and then it's also to leave the food on an open flame on Shabbos because of the gzeira shem yechata. Because maybe he'll stoke the coals. And nowadays, there are no coals, maybe he'll increase the flame, he'll play around with the flame because he'll want to increase it so it should cook quicker, it should be ready for the Friday night meal, so therefore it's awesome. So nowadays, we have something called a blech. People put a blech over the fire. How do you call it in English? What do you call it in English? You call it a blech.
Yeah.
Call it a blech, okay. So basically you cover the fire. Why does a blech help? And the answer is because the whole chashash, Chazal were afraid you might come and play around with the fire because you want to increase it. But if you put a blech on the fire to cover the flame, then you're being Masiach Das. You're being Masiach Das, and plus there's a hecker. You're showing that you're not interested anymore in touching this flame. And not only that, not only are you just not interested in touching the flame, but you're also diminishing sort of the heat, because once something is covering the flame, it's not as hot as before. So that's a hesach hadas and a hecker, therefore it works. Now the chazonyisroel learns, this is the chumrah of the chazonyisroel. The chazonyisroel says that a blech does not help. And that's the way the Stipler of Chaim Kanievsky and the family of the chazonyisroel is noyeg. Klal Yisrael, Shevet Halevi Rav Ozno writes in one of his chuvas, he says, Minhag Yisrael Toirahi lahakol b'zeh, that everybody is mekel and uses a blech. But Rabbi Shlomo Zalman writes something very interesting, and that's very common. He says sometimes people cover the fire with a blech, and then right before Shabbos, it happens a lot with the crock pot and the cholent, you cover basically, either you put something inside the crock pot to raise the insert, right? So that's considered sort of a blech, or you cover the knob. We'll talk about it in a second. So he says, if you cover it, let's say 2 hours before Shabbos, you prepare it for Shabbos, and then you have it on high, right? You want it to cook well, but you don't want to leave it on high for Shabbos. So right before Shabbos, you just pick up the blech a second, and you turn it back on low. He says that defeats the purpose of the blech. The purpose of the blech is so a person should be Mesiach Das, to show Hesach Hadas, that you're not touching this anymore, you're not interested in touching this anymore. But if you're going to go and touch it after you've put the blech on the flame, you're going to touch it right before Shabbos and change the temperature, that's problematic. And Shlomo Zalman says you're not supposed to do that. You shouldn't do that, otherwise the blech doesn't help.
You still got a hecker on Shabbos.
Right, but it's not just a hecker. We'll speak about it right now. For example, could you just cover the knobs without touching the flame? Without covering the flame? You'll have a hecker, right? Perhaps you could just cover the knobs. If the whole chashash, what Chazal were afraid for is that you might come to increase in touch and play around the flame, so just cover the knobs. You're not going to play around the flame anymore. So of course, all the poskim can agree that you can't, it doesn't just help to cover the knobs. You have to do something with the fire itself. You have to cover the fire. And the reason for that is because besides the hecker, you also have to show a hesach hadas, you be mesiach das from this flame, and you don't mind that this flame is on low or as it is. You're not going to change it afterwards. And that's the hecker. The hecker is also that you're being mesiach das. It's nicker from your meisim, from what you're doing, that you're being mesiach das from this flame. So it goes, it goes hand in hand. It doesn't. You can't just cover the knobs. Not only that, Rabbi Moshe, he wants to be machmer, and he says that besides the flame, you have to cover the knobs as well. But Rabbi Shlomo Zalman and others, and that's the way most Klal Yisrael is noyek, that you just cover the flame. You don't have to touch the knobs. You don't have to cover the knobs. Just cover the flame, and that's enough of a hecker to be able to leave uncooked food cooking on Shabbos. What if somebody was over? Somebody transgressed the prohibition of shehiyah. He was over in shehiyah. Is he allowed to eat the food on Shabbos? He realizes Shabbos morning he has guests, and the guests take one look at the crock pot, or take one look at the stovetop, and they realize he didn't use a blech, and they say, "Sorry, fellow, we can't eat your food." Is it also to eat? So the halacha usually is, sorry? They can eat it. Very good. We'll speak about that as well. The halacha usually is that it's something called Maisa Shabbos. If a Yid does malacha on Shabbos, it's usher to have enough from that malacha. You're not allowed to benefit from that malacha. The Gemara brings a three-way machloikas in this halacha. Reb Meir learns that if one does it b'shoigig, it's mutter lechad. B'shoigig on Shabbos, if a person didn't know he cooked on Shabbos, and then someone told him the halacha, or someone told him it's Shabbos, he thought it was Sunday for some reason. The halacha is it's okay, it's a shoigig, and you're allowed to eat it. That's Reb Meir's shita. B'meizid, you're not allowed to eat it till after Shabbos. That's Reb Meir. Okay? Rabbi Yehuda learns that b'shoigig, you have to wait till Matzah Shabbos. You can't eat it on Shabbos. Loy loy v'loy lacherim. It doesn't really matter whether it's you or somebody else. Nobody can eat it on Shabbos, b'shoigig. But Matzah Shabbos, everybody can eat it. B'meizid, Rabbi Yehuda holds, b'meizid the halach is that for the person that cooked it, it's aser olamis. He could never eat it. But for other people, they could eat it after Shabbos. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, b'shoigig, even he himself could eat it after Shabbos along with other people. B'meizid, other people could still eat it after Shabbos, but he himself has to be machmer. He can never eat it again. He can never have enough of this food. Rabbi Yochanan HaSandler, the Gemara brings in several places, he learns that it's a d'oraisa. He learns it from a pasuk that Ma'aseh Shabbos is a d'oraisa, and he learns that b'shoigig, you are never allowed to eat it, and others are allowed to eat it Matzah Shabbos, and b'meizid, no one is ever allowed to touch this food. That's Rabbi Yochanan HaSandler. Now we don't pass it like Rabbi Yochanan HaSandler, but there's a huge machlokas Rishonim. How do we pass it? Do we pass it like Rabbi Meir or Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Meir is the most cool of the Geshita. He holds b'shoigig, everybody's allowed to eat it on Shabbos. B'meizid, you have to wait till Matzah Shabbos. And Rabbi Yehuda learns that b'shoigig, everybody has to wait till Matzah Shabbos, and b'meizid, you can never eat it, but everybody can eat it after Shabbos. Who do we pass it? Like the Rif, the Rambam, the Ramban, most Rishonim pass it like Rabbi Yehuda. The Shulchan Aruch and Siman Shin Yitches, if Aleph, brings the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. But the Goyen, perhaps it's the biggest and longest Goyen in Shulchan Aruch, he is marach tremendously. Shaloi kedarka, he never is marach. And he says the halacha is like Reb Meir, Lakula. And if you did it b'shoigig, everybody's allowed to eat it. You're allowed to benefit from the malacha that was done on Shabbos, if only it was b'shoigig. The Mishnah Brura says that b'mokim atzarich, if it's a tzarich, you're allowed to be soymech on the goyin and have hana, benefit from the malacha that was done on Shabbos by a Jew. You're allowed to benefit and have hana b'shoigig. That's where you can be mekel. So the Mishnah Brura says, b'shaz atzarich, you could be mekel like the goyin, that we pass on like Reb Meir, b'shoigig, you're allowed to benefit from the malacha. And this is a very common. Recently, somebody asked me. He went on a kiruv trip, and one of the people there, of course, they didn't know the halacha. He was being niskarev through Eish HaTorah, and they turned on the air conditioning on Shabbos. Now he's sleeping in that room. He wants to know if he could stay in the room and benefit from the cool air. So b'shas hatzarich, we're not going to send him out. B'shas hatzarich, he could be mekel b'shoigig like Reb Meir. It's very common. So Reb Mishnah is mekel b'shoigig like Reb Meir. There's another halacha. Usually, you have to wait Kadesh Yasu. Kadesh Yasu means you have to, if it's aser, let's say someone cooked on Shabbos, right? So it takes an hour to cook the food on Shabbos. So you can't eat it right after Shabbos. Let's say it was b'shoigig. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you could eat it right after Shabbos. The halacha is usually you have to wait an hour after Shabbos. But the Ma'aseh Shabbos of a year, there's no din of Kadesh Yasu. It's only by a goy. There's no din of Kadesh Yasu. The only place where machmer, when a yid does malacha, you have to wait Kadesh Yasu. There are two places. is by Amir La'akum. One second. No, Amir La'akum is a Yid, didn't do it. I'm saying one place. Shehiyah. If a Yid was over in Shehiyah, you have to wait Kadesh Yasu. That means, well, let's say the food cooked on Shabbos. It took another hour to cook on Shabbos. You left it on an open flame, uncooked food, and it cooked an hour on Shabbos. Not only aren't you allowed to eat that food on Shabbos, if it was B'Shaygir, according to Rabbi Yehuda, and that's where you paskin, that's the Shulchan Aruch paskins, but you also have to wait an hour after Shabbos. That's called Kedei Shiyasu, so long as it takes to cook. Why B'Shehiyah are we machmir? Why B'Shehiyah are we machmir? Because people rationalize B'Shehiyah. People think that Shehiyah, since there's no Maisa done on Shabbos, you're not doing anything on Shabbos. Shehiyah, the way you're transgressing Shehiyah is by leaving food uncooked before Shabbos, so people can rationalize and people will do it more often. So therefore, we're machmer even Kadesh Yasu. We go as far as saying that you cannot have enough of the food even after Shabbos if it's Kadesh Yasu. So now, what's the halacha with food that was left uncooked, right? You're over in Shehiyah. Are you allowed to eat it on Shabbos? Could you be mekel b'shoigig and eat it on Shabbos or not? So the Shulchan Aruch says that by Shehiyah, you cannot be mekel b'shoigig. Now, it shouldn't come to you as a surprise because Shulchan Aruch passes like Rabbi Yehuda, you can never be mekel b'shoigig on Shabbos. But it is a surprise because the Shulchan Aruch Nesim Yitches who passes like Rabbi Yehuda, he only passes by the Oraisa. But by the Rabbanan, Shehiyah is only a Rabbanan. By the Rabbanan, usually we're mekel and we say they can have enough of it right away. Whereas by Shehiyah, because of the rationalization that people could have and say that it's not really an Isser, what am I doing already? It's before Shabbos, he's not really doing anything on Shabbos. Therefore the Gemara says, we're machmer by Shehiyah, even b'shoigig, that you have to wait till after Shabbos.
That's saying if you were to cook something, you're releasing on a black before Shabbos completely not cooked, and it was on a black and left it till Shabbos, then it would be okay to eat on a black.
On a blech, sure. On a blech it will be okay to eat.
Completely uncooked, you're allowed to.
Okay, so even if it's completely uncooked, yeah, there is a bir halacha that brings a Rabbi Kiva that says that completely uncooked food you shouldn't even leave in a blech. But we don't pass like that, Rabbi Kiva. Completely uncooked food, if you leave it on a blech, it's okay. You're even allowed to do it like a tchilo. You can leave it on as long as you have a blech. But we're dealing if there's no blech and you're over in Shehiyah.
So in a crock pot, you put your child on just before Shabbos, even cold, or does it have to be passing like this?
No, if it's cold, it's even better because then it's totally raw. But if it's yatzei letters, you're not allowed to leave your cholent unless you raise it a little bit. You have to do some sort of heck or hesach hadas, like a blech. You can't put a blech inside your crock pot. Though usually people do it. They put in empty tuna cans upside down. There's metal.
You put like some foil in, there's have to be something significant.
You could put some foil. Yeah, you can put some foil. You should. You know what I do is there's an additional problem we have to speak about is a tmana. I'm going to get there.
Just don't cover the top.
Sorry?
It has to be hatmana. There's only a problem with hatmana if you cover the top. If you don't cover the top,
flexible is going to be very good. But some places can say there's a problem with hatmana as well. So what's recommended to do with crock pots is to take silver foil and basically roll it up into a ball. So you have a little bit of space besides the shehiyah because you're diminishing the heat because it's a little bit separated from the heating element. You're also raising it a little bit, and you're also eliminating the problem of atmana, which we'll speak about. But in terms of shehiyah, you definitely have to put in something into the crock pot itself, a piece of silver foil. By the way, the person can say that you can't just put a piece of silver foil over the flame. Yeah, it needs a blech. You need something which will diminish the heat a little bit. So if you have thick silver foil, that would work for in place of a blech. But just a very thin piece of silver foil, it's not going to do much to minimize the heat. That's not enough of a hesach hadas. In a crock pot, so basically you roll it up, then you're good to go. And covering the knobs, Moshe says you should put something maybe on the knobs if you can, but you don't have to. Yeah. So let's just finish up this. If someone was over on shehiyah, the Shulchan Aruch says in shachach v'shah. So if it was a tafshel that was loy bishul kol tzarka, it was only hischel as bashel, you have to wait till Matzah Shabbos. Okay, and of course, kolshkin, if you're a mazid and you left a tafshel on the flame, the mazid, then of course you can't eat it on Shabbos. And according to According to Rabbi Yehuda, the way Shulchan Aruch paskins, you yourself could never eat it. There's another thing people should know, that if you realize that you were over on Shehiyah, you must take off the food right away. We spoke about this the other day, that you have to take off the food right away, because Shehiyah, the problem of Shehiyah is the situation that the pot is in. Right? If the pot is in a situation where you might come to play around with the flame, that's problematic. So even though you could rationalize and say, I didn't do anything on Shabbos and I'm not going to do anything on Shabbos, the fact that you have a pot on an open flame on Shabbos, a pot with uncooked food in it, on an open flame on Shabbos, that's problematic. That is an Aveir of Shehiyah. And according to the chazonish, every second it's a problem, and therefore you should take it off right away. And we spoke about this the other day, that even if it's totally raw, and raw meat, for example, is muktzah, you're not allowed to move it. So if you take it off the flame, then you're being metaltal muktzah. So the chazonish says, nevertheless, you should rather be metaltal the muktzah, take it off the flame, than be over every second on Shehiyah while it's on the flame. So it's a one-time total of muktzah over every second being over in Shehiyah while the pot is on the flame. The chazonish, some argue, but that's the way the chazonish paskins, that you should rather do the muktzah. And muktzah is an easier way to get around if you could. If it's not too heavy, the pot isn't too heavy, you could just pick it up with your elbows. Then there's no problem muktzah either. That's total begufay. Be'ez Hashem, we'll get to muktzah, we'll speak about that. So there's also a way around the muktzah. But definitely Shehiyah is a problem just being in the situation. So therefore, if you have a timer and the timer goes on Shabbos, on your plato, you have a plato and you have a timer, it's set on a timer, it should go on 10 o'clock in the morning, Shabbos morning, so it should be heated up by the time you're eating the Shabbos meal, the day meal, 12 o'clock. That's problematic, because even though you didn't put anything on Shabbos, but it's in a situation of Shehiyah, and that's definitely problematic. Okay, we'll stop over here.